the great powers have spoken out against this aggression occurring in the Caribbean, this intimidation, this threat polluting the waters of the Caribbean Sea. With hatred, with supremacism, with the intention of imposing and making the Caribbean Sea a closed sea for the interests of the United States.
If you can provide us with an overview, what does this advanced phase in the national territory consist of?
Today, our Commander-in-Chief at midnight in the early morning ordered us, as he is accustomed to carry out a deployment, an exercise within the framework of Plan Independencia 200, but raising the level, notable in the streets, recorded in the militia. We went to the barracks, the militia went to the barracks, we went, almost 200,000 troops have been deployed throughout the national territory for this exercise. And I must say that this does not detract from the daily deployment carried out by the Operational Strategic Command, the General-in-Chief, Domingo Hernandez Lares, Operational Strategic Commander, who is here by my side. Well, combating all the other threats, the threat of drug trafficking, the threat of armed terrorist groups, armed drug traffickers who intend to operate on the Venezuelan border. To all of this, we are providing an effective response, and the people of Venezuela must know that they have a Venezuela safeguarded, protected, defended by the Bolivarian National Armed Forces and by the leadership of our Commander-in-Chief, President Nicolas Maduro Moroso. We study all that with the full superior general staff, almost daily. So this exercise, well, besides that, of completing and studying and then preparing for command and control, also involves the deployment of, well, air, land, naval, missile means of all kinds. That is to say, that's why we have called it a higher phase, because it includes exercises that we have already repeated, but now in an integral manner, of an integral nature. That is the vision of this day, and we are going to do it today, we are going to do it tomorrow. We have conducted campaign maneuvers. Do you remember the maneuvers we did in Oquila? Today, coincidentally, the National Assembly is debating practically the final phase of that special law for the commands of the dire of integral defense. It will be called Special Law for the Commands of Integral Defense. What does that mean? Well, that the state as such its institutions integrate into the armed struggle and complement each other, not only to the Caribbean, but to the Latin American region. The great powers have spoken out against this aggression occurring in the Caribbean, this intimidation, this threat polluting the waters of the Caribbean Sea with hatred, with supremacism, with the intention of imposing and making the Caribbean Sea a closed sea for the interests of the United States. The centralization of media, disaster management exercise. And here in Venezuela, the rejection exceeds 90. The rejection exceeds 90% of the entire population against an aggression against Venezuela. That is to say, that tiny minority subversive fascist faction that still tries to do politics in Venezuela, calling for invasions in Venezuela, well, that is over. They do not exist. They do not exist for us. They stop being Venezuelans. They themselves stopped being Venezuelans. They themselves lost their nationality. I insist there has been no pause and there will be no pause. We will continue. Con mitad of the military forces of the United States, the armed forces of the United States are being used as mercenaries, to murder. As their main spokespersons have said, we are going to deploy around the world to murder, to kill. And that is what is happening in the Caribbean, murdering defenseless people, whether or not they are drug traffickers in the Caribbean, murdering and executing without due process. The citizen, the police, the risk management system, the entire system. That has had an international rejection, but categorical, not only in all international forums, throughout the United Nations, in all multilateral human rights organizations, but also within the United States. There is a rejection but noticeable against this excessive, disproportionate, illegal, and illegitimate use of United States military forces against the peoples of the Caribbean, against the peoples of the Caribbean, and against peace in the Latin American region. To continue optimizing the national state